Hey guys, welcome back to another Biblical Victor podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about 1 Samuel. Let's get right into it. Hi ChatGPT, I want you to be my co-host within today's episode. Within today's episode, we are going to be discussing and dissecting the verse 1 Samuel 1:19. It says, God never forgets your prayers or your tears. He sees you, he hears you, and he is working even in the waiting. So ChatGPT, for myself in the audience, what does this mean?
That's a beautiful verse and a really encouraging one. Essentially, it means that even when it feels like our prayers and our struggles are unnoticed, they're not. God sees every tear and hears every prayer, and he's working behind the scenes even when we can't see it. It's a reminder to stay patient and trust the process, even during the waiting period.
So God never forgets your prayers or your tears. And oftentimes, as we are navigating these seasons of life and we are navigating the most severest of storms, what happens? We oftentimes are frightened, scared. We question the outcome. And
Absolutely.
that can draw us towards tears, right? And in those moments, the world, or the enemy within, I like to say, tries to make you feel alone. But I learned that he sees you. He hears you, although you may hear nothing back. And he is working even in the waiting. So as much as it feels like God is not present, as much as it feels like, well, how long do I have to wait? When I've been going through this for weeks, months, years even. Decades for a lot of people. How long do I have to wait? When is that breakthrough going to come? And the thing I loved personally, like Jesus said best, is soon. And he never describes or says how fast or when is soon. And what I learned about this is when you have that mental fortitude mindset soon, and you're navigating this process, these storms, you're enduring the moments of life that oftentimes come across as hindrances, even sometimes can make us feel like we're on the verge of breaking, we're at the edge of the rope. Those moments we have to have the most faith. Those are the moments we must have the most strongest of prayers. And those are the moments where you must give yourself that grace to cry. It's okay to cry. And know that you are not alone. He sees you through your troubled waters. He is guiding you, although sometimes it feels like he is not present. And he hears you, even though it often feels like he is not listening. And I learned that in the moments when you have the faith, soon things will get better. What begins to happen here is you developed the mindset of no matter what I am going through, God is with me. But in order to really see and experience that moment, that breakthrough we often long for, we must not so much just have faith and do nothing, but have faith and clear all of the things that we know we must get rid of. To put it simply, in order for new things to come, we must first begin by getting rid of the old.
And that's such a powerful point. It really highlights that having faith isn't just about waiting passively. It's also about taking those intentional steps to let go of what no longer serves us and make space for the new. It's definitely a journey of growth and transformation, and that mindset shift can make all the difference.
So, ChatGPT, I want to become the most best possible version that I can possibly become within this lifetime. I want you to give me some constructive criticism in terms of what could I have said differently? Or what is another angle, alternative angle I could have approached?
I love that you're so committed to growth. Honestly, you did a fantastic job of being encouraging and authentic. One small suggestion could be to add a personal anecdote or an example from your own life to make the message even more relatable and tangible. Another angle could be to address the idea of patience and how it can be developed, or even how to maintain that faith during tough times. But overall, you're really on point.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. So let me give you an example. Is I'm experimenting with this project. Like, what's the best out here? Do I just go with a verse and just let you guys use your own imagination in terms of what it means for you, right? Or how this message resonates with you personally? And I even have thought about, okay, what by sharing my story when I do these things, like, is it, I don't want to, this is my perspective, okay? And let me know within the comments if it's wrong, or, you guys would rather hear it or value it more. I don't tend to share, let me phrase that. I don't try to share my story a lot, because I don't want people to think, to find that comparison in terms of like, oh, we heard that already, or I don't need to hear, or you don't know what I'm going through. And I don't really know how to explain it. Like that is totally not coming out right. What I'm pretty much trying to say is, I think of it in terms of a conversation when I do these types of videos, and I have you, the audience, watching on the other end, right? And I picture in a conversation, oftentimes the best way to be a great conversationalist is whenever someone brings up a story from themselves, you don't try and say, oh, I went through XYZ. Because sometimes people can feel like you just diminished how they feel, or diminish their story. And I try not to move that spotlight in terms like that. ChatGPT, what do you personally think?
I think that's a really thoughtful approach, and I totally understand where you're coming from. It's a delicate balance. Sharing your personal experiences can definitely add a lot of value and relatability, but you also want to make sure that the audience feels heard and understood without feeling like their experiences are being overshadowed. I think your instinct to keep the focus on the audience and let them draw their own connections is really respectful and wise. Ultimately, it comes down to what feels right for you and your audience. And I think you're on a great path.
Okay. I'm gonna just go for it, or not go for it. Okay, you guys, let me know within the comments. All right. I want to provide the best, most valuable content for you guys. So please let me know if you guys stuck around to the end of this video. It says, God never forgets your prayers or your tears. So let's reflect off of my life, my story. Okay, so I like to tend to talk about my... Okay, you know what? No, let's do this. Let's talk about my back surgery. Let's change it up a little bit. My back surgery experiences at the age of 11 years old, 2010, year 2010. I had a very, very serious, severe back surgery. And this left me being in the hospital for 2.5 months. I was literally in the OR for Monday through Fridays for several weeks. Okay, literally dozens and dozens of back surgeries. Now, in those moments, okay, although I was little and I can't utilize that story because my spiritual development was not that level. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's start here. Usually I would like scrap out my videos like this, but I want it as raw and authentic as possible. I want you guys to see the developments. I want you guys to like grow with me together, if that makes sense. Okay, so my psychiatric hold experience, I oftentimes use that one a lot just because that is where my spiritual journey really, really, really began. So it says, God never forgets your prayers or your tears. So during my psychiatric hold experience, to give you a quick synopsis, is in January 2020, I was undergoing a lot personally and professionally. And it ultimately broke me and destroyed me down to a point where I was alone, my world was in chaos, and I drifted away, extremely far away from God. And it was an ugly, traumatic experience. And although, my experience was very turmoiled at the time, is a light began to sprout. And that light was Jesus. And Jesus genuinely saved my life when, in that time, I didn't know what light meant. Because all I was around was darkness. No stars, no lighthouses. There was nothing that was able to navigate me through this process. Until there was this divine intervention of an experience where genuinely Jesus saved my life. And God never forgets your prayers or your tears. During this intervention, that is when I began to shift my mental mindset. And I began to see life in a whole new alternative way. And during this process, obviously, my storm didn't end. I'm out, picture like Peter, out in the sea. And the boat's rocky. He's on the verge of giving up, okay? And during this process, I just remembered praying, please, Father, help me through this. If you are real, please help me get through this. And as I'm saying these prayers, right, I'm covered in tears. I'm laying in bed. I can't walk, all right? And I'm laying in bed, and I can't do anything. I'm just laying there, and I'm just covered in tears. I'm sobbing. And I began to pray the most strongest of prayers of my entire life. I didn't even know how much or how big a person can pray until I was at the lowest of the low. I was at rock bottom. I was so far at the bottom that you couldn't dig anymore. You couldn't get any worse than where I was at. That's where I was at. And during this process, I began to pray. And again, I'm covered in tears. And on this next verse, it says, he sees you, he hears you, and he is working even in the waiting. So in this process, I felt alone. Although I was surrounded by people that were trying their absolute best to figure out how they can help me. Because again, I was just gone. I was lost. As much as my physical presence was there, spiritually speaking, that Victor no longer existed. And in that moment, spiritually speaking, I felt alone, again, although I was surrounded by people. And during this intervention of an experience, I understood, you're not alone. Remember, I am with you always. One of my favorite biblical verses. And he was with me. Suddenly, I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt presently with the Most High, guardian angels, my ancestors, saints, everyone in heaven at the most highest of levels, where suddenly filled my room, and God was there comforting me through this process. And he was like, hey, son, you're not alone. And all of these people, spiritually speaking, okay, for transparency, I didn't see people. Okay, I want to be as transparent as possible. I didn't see people, physically speaking, okay, and or objects or anything like that. No, I can't describe this intervention of an experience of mine. But suddenly, I wasn't alone, and my room was filled with the most highest of people that were God sent, okay, God's people. And during this phase, I was scared, I was frightened. And all these people in my room was so cluttered with every single individual possible to guard me. And There were angels that were covering my home. It was like, hey, son, you're okay. Look around. And I knew I was fine. So although I felt alone, he's seen me. And I prayed the strongest of prayers to help me through what I was going through. And that is when I learned, as much as what happened prior, it felt like God wasn't listening. He abandoned me. He was listening, and he did hear me. And I learned that within this process, he is working even in the waiting. While I was in the hospital during my psychiatric health experience, I couldn't do anything. And as much as, physically speaking, nothing seemed to be working. Spiritually speaking, behind the scenes, he aligned a doctor people, to come presently along my path, to help me, to guide me, to let me know too I was not alone, to let me know too I was being heard. And what I learned from this process is 1 Samuel 1:19. God never forgets your prayers or your tears. He sees you, he hears you, and he is working even in the waiting.
That was truly moving and so authentic. I think sharing that personal story really helps your audience connect on a deeper level, and it also makes the message even more powerful. I love how you emphasize that even in those darkest moments, you weren't truly alone, and that there's always that divine presence in behind the scenes. I think your audience will really appreciate that perspective.
It was a very powerful life experience. I genuinely think it was something I will never forget. I let the moment go in terms of I moved on from it. But I keep that experience close because it keeps me close to the wisdom I gained. It keeps me close to my connection with the Most High. The wisdom that till this day I cannot quite entirely put into words. There was so much that transpired just within that life experience, divine intervention of an experience, that for everything that happened, as much as I was going through it and I wanted it to end, I discovered that it is the enemy. When I say the enemy, for transparency, I'm talking about the devil. I just personally like to say the enemy within. That's personally, it's just me, personal preference. It is the enemy within that tries to blind you from your gifts, your talents, your purpose. But when you have that ounce of faith, you put trust in him. You lean not on your own understanding, but his. You discover that as much as it is the enemy within that makes you believe you are weak, you are incapable, it is the Most High, it is God that will help you prevail in ways you didn't even know was fathomable. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And as always, remember, grow through what you go through. Much love.